We talk endlessly about anxiety. We dedicate entire therapy sessions, Netflix documentaries, and self-help bestsellers to people who shut down, go quiet, or pull away when emotions get too big. That is the narrative we have all agreed on. Emotional overwhelm looks like silence. But there is this entire other group. People who do not go quiet when they are overwhelmed. They go loud. Not in a dramatic, theatrical way. In a way that confuses everyone around them, including themselves. They cry. And they are furious about it. You know this person. The colleague who slams a report down and then has to excuse themselves because their eyes are betraying them mid-argument. The partner who says, "I am not sad, I am angry," while tears run down their face. The friend who apologizes for crying when they were never sad a day in this moment. Their psychology is probably the most misunderstood of anyone alive today, because everyone assumes crying means sadness. And these people are not sad. They are something far more complicated than that. And once you understand where that comes from, you will never look at an angry crier the same way again. Picture this. It is 1994. You are 7 years old. Something unfair happens. A teacher embarrasses you in front of the class, or a parent dismisses something that mattered deeply to you. You feel this enormous surge of heat in your chest. You want to say something, and then your eyes fill up, and the anger turns into shame. Because now everyone thinks you are weak. A study published in the journal Motivation and Emotion in 2017 found that approximately 46% of people who cry during conflict report feeling that the crying was involuntary and unwanted. Not cathartic. Not relieving. Unwanted. They did not choose it. Their nervous system chose it for them. And that is the origin of the entire phenomenon. The brain did not separate rage from grief early enough. The wiring that processes threat and the wiring that processes loss ended up sharing the same exit ramp. That exit ramp is tears. Now, picture a different scene. It is 1998. Same kid. Slightly older now. They have learned that expressing anger directly gets them punished, dismissed, or labeled as difficult. So the anger goes underground. It does not disappear. It finds another way out. The body, unlike the adults in that house, does not lie. And now watch what happens when that kid grows up. They become someone who experiences anger as a full-body physical event. The throat tightens. The face goes hot. And before they can articulate a single coherent sentence about why they are furious, they are already crying. And feeling embarrassed about crying. Which makes them angrier. Which makes them cry more. This is why they struggle to be taken seriously in conflict. Not because they are too emotional, but because our cultural script says tears equal weakness, and weakness cannot be authoritative. So they speak their truth and simultaneously appear to be falling apart, even when they are, internally, absolutely certain of where they stand. Picture a workplace disagreement. Someone questions their work unfairly in a meeting. They have facts. They have receipts. They have every logical argument lined up. And then the tears show up uninvited. And suddenly the room stops listening to the argument and starts worrying about whether they are okay. The point evaporates. The power dynamic shifts. A study published in Cognition and Emotion in 2011 found that observers consistently rated crying individuals as less credible and less competent during conflict, regardless of whether the content of their argument was valid. The tears became the story. The argument ceased to exist. Evolutionary psychologists call this a displacement behavior. The body channels one overwhelming state into a physical output designed for a different overwhelming state. In this case, the threat response borrows the grief response's infrastructure. Useful if you are a mammal in a field. Less useful if you are in a quarterly review. They feel things first and think second. And in a world that rewards the opposite, that is a daily tax. This is also why they often over-explain themselves after an emotional moment. They spend 20 minutes reconstructing the argument they were making before the tears appeared, trying to prove that they were never sad, just furious, which reads to everyone around them as either desperate or excessive. But internally, it is a very specific kind of grief. The grief of not being heard accurately. Think about the partner dynamic here. They get into an argument. The tears start. Their partner, who is ready to fight, suddenly switches into comfort mode. Hands up. Voice softened. Are you okay? Why are you crying? And the angry crier wants to scream, because they do not want comfort. They want resolution. They want someone to engage with what they are actually saying. Research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, published in 2019, found that partners of people who cry during conflict report significantly higher rates of conflict avoidance, because they associate their partner's tears with emotional escalation and instinctively try to de-escalate. But de-escalation is not what the crier wants. The crier wants a fair fight. They just cannot stop their face from doing its thing. The clinical term for this overlap is emotional lability, not instability. Lability, the rapid, involuntary movement between emotional states, particularly under stress. It is neurological more than psychological, and yet people treat it like a character flaw every single time. Their tears are not manipulation. They would love nothing more than to scream without crying. They have been practicing for 30 years. Here is something almost nobody talks about. People who cry when they are angry often have an extraordinarily high threshold for actually expressing anger in the first place. They hold it, and hold it, and hold it some more, because they already know what happens when it comes out. So they compress it until the only possible release valve is the one they do not want. Think about the friend who never complains, never raises their voice, never gives you any indication that something is building. And then one day, over something that looks small from the outside, they are crying in the parking lot while telling you exactly how they feel about something that happened 18 months ago. It never looked like anger, but it was always anger. A study in Frontiers in Psychology from 2021 found that individuals with high emotional suppression tendencies reported significantly more involuntary emotional release episodes, specifically crying and voice cracking, during interpersonal conflict. The longer the compression, the more dramatic the release. The body collects interest. Psychologists call this emotional flooding. The system gets so overwhelmed by the accumulated weight of unexpressed feeling that it bypasses the prefrontal cortex entirely. Rational speech becomes impossible. The tear ducts open, and the person standing there, shaking slightly, is experiencing something closer to a neurological event than a breakdown. They are not falling apart. They are overloaded. There is a difference, a meaningful one. What is fascinating is that these same people are often described by the people closest to them as the most reliable, level-headed, and composed individuals they know. Because most of the time they are. They have built extraordinary internal regulation systems. Until those systems hit their ceiling. Think about parenting or leadership here. They are the ones who stay calm in genuine crises. Car accident, medical emergency, organizational disaster. They handle it. Because in a real emergency, the stakes feel proportionate to their nervous system's intensity. It is the small unfairnesses, the tiny dismissals, the accumulated moments of being talked over, that undo them. Research from Developmental Psychology, published in 2016, found that individuals who developed high emotional suppression in childhood due to invalidating environments showed paradoxical emotional profiles in adulthood. Highly stable under objective stress. Disproportionately reactive to perceived injustice. Because injustice was the original wound. They can survive a hurricane. They cannot survive being interrupted 3 times in the same meeting. The injustice triggers something older than the present moment. Here is what is fascinating, though. People who cry when they are angry are often among the most emotionally honest people in any room. They cannot perform calm they do not feel. They cannot manufacture composure on command. They are constitutionally incapable of the kind of emotional dishonesty that makes some people look very put together while feeling absolutely nothing. In parenting and in close relationships, they often pass on something quietly valuable: emotional permission. Their children grow up knowing that feeling something intensely is not shameful, that the body expresses what the mind cannot always contain, that tears are not the enemy of strength. What they struggle with is the relentless exhaustion of being misread. Every conflict leaves two losses: the loss of the argument, which the tears derailed, and the loss of being known, which the misinterpretation cost them. They carry both, usually quietly. What makes them remarkable is the precision of their feeling. When they tell you something hurt them, it hurt them. When they tell you something is wrong, something is wrong. They do not manufacture emotional reactions. They cannot. The very system that makes them cry against their will is the same system that makes them impossible to fake. They are like pressure gauges on old industrial pipes. Accurate, sensitive, a little inconvenient to look at, and absolutely the only reason anyone knows when something is about to go seriously wrong. And pressure gauges do not get much appreciation. They are not the glamorous part of the machine. Nobody writes articles about them. They just sit there registering truth, getting ignored until someone finally pays attention. They cry when they are angry because they feel everything at full volume and were never given a quieter way out. That is not weakness. That is a nervous system that refused to lie to you. You should probably listen to what it is saying. If this hit home for you, if you recognize yourself doing the furious, tearful arithmetic of trying to be taken seriously while your face absolutely refuses to cooperate, or if you know someone who cries their way through arguments they are clearly winning, share this with them. They deserve to be understood accurately for once. Please subscribe, and if you want to support these deep dives, hit that join button to become a channel member. These videos take serious research and even more serious tissue boxes.